Imagine starting a new business in a place that is broken and destroyed. After the war, Japan was like this. Many cities were in ruins. It was a very difficult time. But in this difficult place, two men had a big dream. They were Akio Morita and Masaru Ibuka. They wanted to create a company that would make new things. They were engineers and they loved technology. They believed technology could make life better for everyone. It was an ambitious idea in a country that was starting over. Today, Sony is a huge company all over the world. You can find Sony products everywhere. They make TVs, cameras, and music players. They also make video games like PlayStation. Sony is even involved in movies and music. From small electronics to big entertainment, Sony does a lot. But the journey for Sony was not always easy. They had to face many problems and tough competition. Other companies wanted to be the best too. Sony had to fight to stay ahead. There were times when things were very difficult. There were rivals and unexpected challenges. This book tells the story of Sony. It is about how Akio Morita and Masaru Ibuka started with a small idea in a damaged office. It is about their journey to build one of the biggest companies in the world. It is a story of dreams, hard work, and overcoming challenges. Get ready to learn about the amazing history of Sony. 2. Starting small. Akio Morita was born in Japan. His family had a very old business. For many years they made and sold a drink called sake. Akio was expected to take over this business one day. From a young age, he went to meetings about the family business. But Akio was more interested in other things. He liked to play with radios and cameras. He wanted to learn how they worked. Akio asked his father if he could study science and engineering. His father said yes. This was a good decision for Akio. Later, when there was a war, Akio could use his engineering skills to help. He worked for the army designing things. He did not have to fight in the war. It was during this time in the army that Akio met Masaru Ibuka. They became friends quickly. They both loved technology, but they did not like using it for war. They wanted to build things that would help people in their daily lives. They dreamed of a better future. After the war, Japan was in a very bad situation. Many cities were destroyed by bombs. People had lost their homes. It was hard to find food and jobs. It was a difficult time to start a new business. But Masaru Ibuka had an idea. He wanted to create a company where engineers could work freely and make new things. Masaru tried to make some products at first. One was a rice cooker, but it did not cook rice well. Sometimes the rice was not cooked enough and sometimes it burned. Then he tried to make a heating blanket, but it was not safe and did not work properly either. These first ideas were not successful, but Masaru did not give up. He kept trying. He noticed that many radios were broken after the war. During the war, the government had made it so people could not listen to news from other countries on their radios. Now, people wanted to fix their radios to listen to news and music again. Masaru started a radio repair service. This was a good idea. Many people needed their radios fixed. Masaru's business became known. A magazine wrote an article about his work. Akio Morita read this magazine article. He saw that his friend Masaru was starting an engineering business. Akio contacted Masaru. He wanted to help. Soon, Akio and Masaru decided to start a company together. They wanted to make new products. Akio needed to ask his father for permission. For hundreds of years, his family had been in the sake business. It was a tradition. But Akio's father understood his son's passion. He agreed to let Akio follow his dream. He even gave Akio and Masaru some money to start their new company. In 1946, Akio and Masaru officially started their company. It was called Tokyo Telecommunications Engineering Corporation. This was the beginning of the company that would later become known as Sony. They had a name, some money, and a team of engineers. Now they just needed to find something to sell. 3. A new name. In 1946, Akio Morita and Masaru Ibuka started their company. They called it Tokyo Telecommunications Engineering Corporation. It was a long name. They had some money from Akio's father to begin. They also had a team of engineers. Now they needed something to sell. At first, they made a tape recorder for the government. It was not very popular, but it helped them learn. They then made a portable tape recorder. This was their first successful product. Things were starting to look good for the company. Around this time, something new and important happened in technology. It was the transistor. A transistor was a small thing that could do the work of bigger, older parts in electronics. It was a big change. Akio and Masaru heard that the company who invented the transistor was giving licenses to other companies. This meant other companies could use the technology if they paid. Akio went to the United States to get a license for Japan. He was very good at talking and made a deal. He got the license. This was very important for their company. During his trip to America, Akio saw something that surprised him. The buildings were very tall and modern. He also stopped in Germany on his way back home. Germany was also growing fast after the war. Akio realized that Japan was behind other countries in technology. When Akio came back to Japan, something small made him think a lot. His waiter put a little paper umbrella on his dessert. The waiter said it was made in Japan. He thought it was funny, but Akio felt ashamed. At that time, made in Japan meant things were cheap and not very good. Akio wanted to change this. He wanted made in Japan to mean good quality. This became his new goal. Now that they had the transistor technology, Akio and Masaru wanted to make their company bigger and sell products all over the world. They needed a better name, a name that everyone could say and remember easily. They looked in a dictionary for ideas. They found the Latin word sonus. Sonus means sound. They also liked the English word sunny. Sunny was a slang word for a young boy. They put sonus and sunny together and came up with Sony. They thought Sony was a good name. It was short, easy to say in any language, and it was about sound, which was important for their products. They started to use the name Sony for their new products. One of the first products with the new name was a transistor radio. It was smaller and more portable than other radios. This was the beginning of Sony becoming a famous name around the world. 4. Big TV. After the transistor radio became popular, Sony wanted to make more new things. One thing they worked on was making radios smaller. They made a new radio called the TR-55. It was good, but Masaru Ibuka wanted to make it even smaller. So Sony made another radio, the TR-63. This radio was very small. They said it was pocket-sized. It was a little bit too big for some pockets, but Sony was clever. They made shirts with bigger pockets to show that the radio could fit. The TR-63 was very successful. It was small and cheap. Many people wanted to buy it. Sony became a famous company in Japan. Soon they started to sell their radios in America. Sony was the first Japanese company to be on the American stock market. This was a big step for them. While Sony was selling radios in America, Masaru Ibuka was thinking about TVs. At that time, there were color TVs, but they were not very good. The picture was not clear and they were expensive. Most people still watched black and white TVs. Many companies wanted to make better color TVs. It was like a race. Sony wanted to win this race. In 1961, Sony started to make their own color TV. Masaru Ibuka wanted to make a completely new type of color TV, not just make the old TVs better. But it was hard. The first TVs Sony made had problems. The picture was not good. Sony had to sell these TVs for less money than it cost to make them. It looked like a big failure, but Masaru Ibuka did not stop. He and his team kept working. They changed how the TV worked. They worked very hard to make the picture better and to make the TV cheaper to make. Finally, they made a new TV. They called it the Trinitrone. The Trinitrone TV had a very good picture. It was brighter and clearer than other color TVs. Because the picture was so good, Sony could sell it for a higher price. The Trinitrone TV became very popular. For many years, Sony sold a lot of Trinitrone TVs. They sold about 290 million TVs. It was a big success for Sony. The Trinitrone TV was so good that Sony even won an Emmy Award in 1973. This award is for good work in television. After the success of the Trinitrone TV, Sony became a very big name in electronics all over the world. People knew that made in Japan now meant good quality, just like Akio Morita wanted. 5. The format war. In the 1970s, watching TV was different. Shows were on at set times, and if you missed them, you missed them. But Sony wanted to change this. In 1975, they made a new machine called Betamax. It was a video cassette recorder, or VCR. With Betamax, people could record TV shows and watch them later. It seemed like a great idea, and it was. Betamax was good quality, but soon another system came out, VHS. VHS was made by other companies. Suddenly, there were two types of videotapes, Betamax and VHS. This started a format war. It was like two different teams fighting to be the best. Betamax was better quality than VHS. The picture was clearer. Many experts said Betamax was the better technology, but VHS became more popular. Why? One reason was money. VHS machines and tapes were cheaper to buy than Betamax. For most people, price was important. Another reason was time. VHS tapes could record for longer. You could record a longer movie or more TV shows on one VHS tape. Betamax tapes were shorter. Even though Betamax was better quality, VHS was more practical and cheaper. People started buying VHS more. Shops started selling more VHS tapes and machines. Slowly, VHS became the winner. Betamax became less and less popular. For Sony, this was a big problem. They had spent a lot of money making Betamax. They thought it would be a success, but VHS won. Sony lost a lot of money on Betamax. It was a big failure for them. Akio Morita, one of the founders of Sony, was not happy about losing the format war, but he did not give up. He started thinking about the next big thing. He traveled a lot for work and he loved music. He had an idea for a new product. This new idea would be very different from Betamax, and it would become a huge success for Sony. But first, Sony had to deal with the losses from the format war and learn from their mistakes. 6. Music everywhere. Akio had a new idea. He was often traveling by plane. He wanted to listen to music while traveling. He thought about a small, portable music player. It would play music tapes. People could listen with headphones. This was the idea for the Walkman. At first, many people at Sony were not sure about the Walkman. They thought people would not like it. In Japan, headphones were often used by people with hearing problems. Some people thought it was embarrassing to wear headphones in public. Also, Sony already made tape recorders. Tape recorders could record and play music. So some people asked, why would people need just a music player? But Akio believed in his idea. He thought people wanted to listen to their own music anywhere. He said if the Walkman did not sell 30,000 units, he would leave the company. He was very confident. The Walkman was a huge success. It was a new idea for many people. Listening to your own music wherever you went was exciting. The Sony Walkman became very popular. Sony sold millions of Walkmans. It changed how people listened to music. Sony also wanted to be more involved in the music industry itself. They started their own music company. At first, it was with another company called CBS Records. Later, Sony worked with Philips. They wanted to create new music technology together. After many years of work, Sony and Philips invented the compact disc, or CD. CD were a new way to store music digitally. This was different from tapes, but making CDs and CD players was expensive. Sony needed to make money from CDs to cover these costs. The CD became a big success for Sony because they found 4 ways to make money from it. First, Sony's own music company made money from selling CDs. Second, Sony allowed other companies to make CDs too, and Sony got money from them. This was like renting out the CD idea. Third, Sony started selling CD players. Fourth, Sony's music company sold music by famous singers on CDs. Because of these 4 ways to earn money, the CD business grew very fast. When one part of the business did well, it helped the other parts. For example, when more companies made CDs, more people wanted to buy CD players. And when more people had CD players, they bought more music CDs from Sony. CD made Sony very rich. With this money, Sony bought CBS Records completely. This became Sony Music Entertainment. Today, it is one of the biggest music companies in the world. It makes music with many famous singers. From the Walkman to CDs and their own music company, Sony made music available everywhere. 7. Game time. In 1991, Nintendo made a new game system called the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Sony helped Nintendo to make the sound part for this new system. It was a popular console, but it had some problems. The games for Super Nintendo were on cartridges. Cartridges could not hold much information, so games could not be very big or have lots of detail. Sony had an idea to make games better. They suggested to Nintendo that they make a CD player for the Super Nintendo. CDs could store much more information than cartridges. Sony thought that if games were on CDs, they could be much better with better music and pictures. Nintendo liked this idea, and Sony started to work on making a CD add-on for the Super Nintendo. Sony and Nintendo worked together for a while on this project. Sony believed they were creating something great for Nintendo. But then, Nintendo suddenly changed their mind. They announced that they would also make a CD system for their console, but they would not work with Sony anymore. Instead, Nintendo said they would work with Philips. Philips was the same company that Sony had worked with to invent the CD. Sony was very surprised and felt let down by Nintendo's decision. They felt betrayed. Nintendo chose to work with another company after Sony had put in effort and ideas. It was a shock for everyone at Sony. Nintendo decided to create their own CD system with Philips, leaving Sony out of the plan. But Sony did not stop. They decided to use what they had learned and create their own game console. This console would play games from CDs and would be completely independent from Nintendo. Sony decided to call this new console the PlayStation. The Sony PlayStation was released in 1994. It was different from other game consoles at that time. It used CDs, which allowed for bigger and more detailed games. The games on PlayStation had better graphics and sound compared to games on cartridge-based consoles. Game developers found it easier and more exciting to create games for the PlayStation. They could make more complex and interesting games. The PlayStation became very successful very quickly. It sold many millions of consoles all over the world. People enjoyed playing new and exciting games like Gran Turismo and Tekken on the PlayStation. Nintendo also made a new console, the Nintendo 64, to compete with PlayStation. But the PlayStation was more popular. Many more games were made for PlayStation, and it became more dominant than Nintendo in the video game market. Sony learned a valuable lesson from the success of PlayStation. They realized that having famous game series was very important. Games like Crash Bandicoot and Final Fantasy VII became very popular and made people want to buy PlayStation consoles. Sony understood that owning these game characters and game series, called intellectual property, was very important for their future business. This success in video games was a big new win for Sony. 8. Movies and more. Sony wanted to do more than just electronics and music. They decided to get into movies. In 1989, Sony bought a movie studio called Columbia Pictures. This became Sony Pictures Entertainment. Now Sony was making movies too. One very smart move Sony made was with Spider-Man. In the 1990s, Marvel, the company that created Spider-Man, was not doing well. Sony saw a chance and talked to Marvel about making movies about Spider-Man. Sony made a deal with Marvel to buy the rights to make Spider-Man films. They paid a small amount of money, only $7 million for the movie rights. They also agreed to pay Marvel some money for each movie and a part of the money the movies made. This deal was very good for Sony. Spider-Man movies became very popular and made a lot of money. Over time, Spider-Man became worth billions of dollars for Sony. It was one of their best investments. Interestingly, Marvel offered Sony to buy the rights to all of their characters for a little more money at that time. But Sony only wanted Spider-Man. Later, other Marvel characters like Iron Man and Captain America became very famous and made billions of dollars for Marvel and later Disney, who bought Marvel. Some people think Sony missed a big chance by not buying all of Marvel's characters. In 2014, Sony Pictures had a big problem. Hackers attacked their computers. They stole a lot of information, including personal details of Sony employees and secret company emails. The hackers also released some unreleased Sony movies online. It was a serious cyber attack. At the time, there was a movie Sony was about to release that made fun of the leader of North Korea. Some people, including the US government, said that North Korea was behind the hack because they were angry about the movie. However, some experts are not sure if North Korea was really responsible. Despite this problem, Sony continued to grow and expand. They are now involved in many different businesses, not just electronics, music, and movies. They are in insurance, banking, robots, and even making parts for electric cars. From a small company in Japan after the war, Sony has become a huge global company. They have made many products that people around the world use and enjoy. Sony has taken risks, learned from failures, and always tried to create new and interesting things. They have definitely left a big mark on the world of technology and entertainment.
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.